Okay, the content of this meeting is being sent to a third party. Yep.
Got it.
Cheers.
Oh yeah, I've got some coffee for me today.
Oh,
Yeah.
look at us. Yay.
All right, I'm just gonna mute us and then we'll go ahead and start. Good morning and welcome to Unlikely Conversations. This is Genevieve and Sarah. Well, Genevieve, now is it Travis, right?
Yeah, and I should have I'm going to rename myself right now.
Okay. And then Sarah Placencia was out and she's back. So we're so excited to have her back from her travels.
Hello.
We are just finishing up our month of addiction and changing habits. And actually last week we talked a little bit about parenting habits and parenting manifesto, like having your own parenting manifesto. And so today I want to just preface this with we're not going to be giving medical advice here. We're not diagnosing. We're simply sharing common things amongst us and then also sharing our opinions, sharing our professional experiences. But we highly encourage you to find your own route of diagnosis. And if you don't know, we have lots of suggestions where you can find this information. And we'll be talking about that today, actually, amongst other things. So just know that this is just purely our opinion and for entertainment and education. So welcome. And on that note, I want to kick it off and ask you guys, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, me too.
It's early. I woke up and I was like, oh gosh, I got this conversation, but it just feels good to come together and talk in this way. So I'm feeling really good.
Yeah. How about you, Sarah? Are you feeling better? I
Yeah.
know you had that
I
bronchitis.
know. I taught fitness on a cruise just to fill in case people are wondering what's going on in our lives. I was like, I was gone, but teaching classes, and then the second to last day, I was like, oh my gosh, I had lost my voice. I thought from screaming, but then I really had a
I
lot of
could
stuff
feel it.
coming up. Yeah.
Um,
So yesterday was my first full day of classes. Like I teach a noontime class that's like strength, and then my dance fitness class. I came in and everyone's looking at me and they're like, "I'm nervous." I'm like, "You're nervous. I'm the one that's sick." But at
That's
this point, I felt like I wasn't contagious. So
yeah,
I'm definitely on the up and up. So I'm grateful for it.
that's so
Just
fun.
I was just thinking sometimes you need those hardships in order to realize
yes,
and be grateful for your health. Like
Yeah.
yes.
so yesterday I was really thankful and grateful, and same thing today. Like every day is a
Yeah.
little bit better. So which is nice. But thanks for asking. What's going on with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cassie.
I I felt like this morning my bed was so warm and comfortable. I was like, I really am just so comfortable. I don't want to get out of it. And my
Yeah.
husband was like, you got to go start the computer like super early because the computer doesn't like to work in the morning either. So he's like, you got to get up. I'm like, I know. He actually ended up coming and signing in for me because he's an IT guy. So I'm always like, this thing doesn't work in here. Why is it? What's wrong with it? Like I'm always complaining, like as if it's his
No,
job to like take care of it. I think it's
no.
so funny too. I think I sent you this, Genevieve, about the husband that
Yes.
was like, hey, look what I did. I did the dishes. And he was like, thank you. Like, look at me. And I think role reversal, hello, like I think I just
Mm,
expect my husband to do the IT stuff because like that's part
mm,
of his work job. But it really
Totally.
made me think about like I
mm.
shouldn't expect it. I should probably ask. So
Yeah.
super grateful for him. Honey, I love you.
Aw, I
Thank you so
know.
much for fixing the computer because I get so frustrated.
Yeah, that's
But
exactly it.
otherwise,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Right
I'm
before this
actually
call, I asked Eddie, I was like, can you get the Bluetooth on this? So
yeah, you're
same
like,
thing. Yeah, please.
isn't
Yeah.
it funny? Like there's
Right.
certain things we
Mm,
just our husbands just need to be
yeah.
responsible for because
Mm,
I just can't do
no.
it. That's how we
Yeah.
balance each other.
That's true. Yeah.
So so I think Genevieve has a pair of
Sorry, guys. I'm making a
trailer.
weird face for another reason. Sorry.
Okay.
Is
You're
it
like,
the
where did that
22-year-old
weird face
cat?
come from? My cat is doing something funky.
Oh
So,
no. We were just talking about how old he is. He or
so
she.
I have two cats. Sheba's 22. Um, and and then Zeke is our young cat, but he's not young. He's like 11. So,
Oh.
um, anyway, the younger cat is having a moment, a digestive moment. So
Well, we can't hear it, so that's good.
good, good. I'm like,
Wow.
whoa.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
20,
Love it.
22 years
Love it.
though. We should have
Yeah.
some
I
tips
know.
on on pet care.
Yeah. No kidding. That's
Genevieve.
crazy.
Oh, look how cute he is. Or is that the
Oh,
girl?
This is Sheba. This is the
That's a
22-year-old. And she
Wow.
has stopped bathing herself. So
oh
she's
no.
Mm.
like getting up there.
Oh,
But
yeah.
she's
Speaking of
very
Timu, they have it's like it's like a little fur brusher, but it steams
yeah.
them. You don't have to wash them.
Ooh. Oh, I
I bought
love
one
that.
because I wanted it for my dog.
Wow.
I love
That's a
that.
great
It's
idea.
on
Yeah.
Timu.
Yeah, I think it's on Timu. I'll send you the link. I was like,
Okay, cool.
I need this in my life. It was like maybe $8. And it like has a little thing and it just you brush them and it's supposed to take the fur out too, like to like make them less
Oh.
Yeah,
shedding.
Hmm.
I was pretty impressed.
Wow, that is
that's
impressive.
cool. That's very
Yeah.
cool.
All right.
Side note.
The things you learn.
I know, right?
No, right. So fun.
Sorry for the distraction, but
No, it's fun.
you know,
It's real
with
life.
Yeah.
it's real life happens, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, last week when we were talking, we shared at the very end of the conversation that we had Brene Brown's wholehearted parenting manifesto.
Mm.
And so for our icebreaker today, I thought maybe we could pull that back up, Cassie,
Okay.
to share. Um, and where we had landed was maybe people could think about what they might want to adopt from this. Um, Maybe you want to adopt the whole thing, I don't know, but like what you were really drawn to and what you'd like to adopt, or what you'd like to add or adapt to this manifesto. So I just thought maybe we could talk a little bit about that just to get rolling, and then we can roll into kind of, you know, like what we discussed, Cassie. We're talking about addiction and treatment options and things like that. If that sounds good to everybody.
Yeah. That sounds
Oh,
great.
definitely.
So
Genevieve,
I
do you have your homework done?
I do I do have my homework
Okay.
done. It's not, this will make sense to everybody. So it doesn't have to be a big deal. So the thing that I would like to add or kind of flesh out here is really this message to my son Nolan, that I'm going to commit to speaking to him with respect and care,
I love
and that I want my messages of his incredible worth and of my love for him to become his inner voice, so that he doesn't have that internal
Oh, wow.
critic, that's like, because what we say to our kids does become their internal voice in that recording that they have. And so
Yeah.
I want to try to commit to my voice being in his mind and being a positive thing, like, giving him those messages of worth and love. So that
Love
was
that.
mine.
That's gonna be mine too. No,
I
just
love
kidding.
that.
I
Feel
was
it?
like,
You
I
can
did
feel
not
it.
do my homework. She brought it up and I was like, oh yeah, I had homework. But we kind of talked about it, I feel like
We
last
did. We talked about yours.
yeah. And I think the biggest thing but I really do love that so much because I think um now that you're saying that, like as you were speaking that, I was thinking about my parents and I was thinking I do really hear their voices in certain areas in my life. Like, with my mom, I probably hear it more in like what I eat and how I take care of myself. And my dad, I hear, financially being responsible and treating people with respect. So I love that you're saying like you want your voice to always be that voice to have respect. I
Yes.
think people so often don't believe that kids deserve respect, and so
Yes.
I think that that's wrong. And I think you're so right for just saying like being able to speak to them because you can be respectful of your kids without
Absolutely.
forcing them to believe the same way you believe and
Yes.
letting them find their own way.
Yes.
So I think that's probably I don't have it written so beautifully as you do, but I think for me, I really want my kids to know that in our family we act with integrity, like
Yes.
always, always, like just the definition of integrity, doing the right thing even when no one's watching. And
Yes.
um, I want the same thing, my voice to be the voice that encourages them from the sidelines. Like when they're struggling, I want them to hear me in the background, like, you can do this, you've got this. And so
Right. I
really
love
paying attention to the wording and in my parenting. And also I think another thing that I don't think she touched on in here is um my beliefs are not the only way,
that.
right? Like
Yes.
it's not about what I want or what I think is right. It's about what works for them in their life, because what I believe may not serve them in their path. And so I want them to know that no matter what they believe, I will always love them and I will always cherish them, even if it's different from my beliefs, and I think people so often think beliefs religiously. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about
No.
beliefs as in, like, I believe that you can do anything that you put your mind to. I believe that if you have enough faith, that the universe will support you. So those kind of things, I think I wanted to just add. I mean, there's so much I could probably add, but she did such a great job. It was probably hard for her to whittle it down to like this single
Totally.
page parenting
Yes.
or
I,
family manifesto.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's definitely something that, not having children, but understanding, like, I love that you said, kids need to be respected too. And I think even just, the times in my life where I was like, wanting, especially the younger generation, like to be seen. Because I was always offended when I would hear, I just remember in high school, one of my friends was like, oh my gosh, I hate those elementary kids. And I'm like, why would you hate them? Like, I mean, it's funny. She's a great mom. And she's like, but I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like, why? They're just kids, like, I don't know if it was something that just stood out to me, but I was like, they're just trying to do their best with what they can, and I think it was also something where, I was always small for my age. I, didn't get good grades. Like there was a lot of things that it was like, no, like I still mattered, or at least I was always trying to fight for that, And so I think it's important to, practice that respect with children of all ages and ask them, questions. And I know even with my nieces, it was really neat. Well, and I doubt that people that I'm going to talk about, they won't see this. It's fine. But I just remember my nieces were talking about they would only ever see us at Christmas, and then I would come and visit in the summer, so 2 weeks out of every year. And it was just really neat because they were like, man, you and Eddie, we feel so much closer to you guys, and we only see you like twice a year. And they were saying that they have another aunt and uncle that they saw every single Sunday. And all they would do was like bicker about like politics and just different things. And it was like, their voices weren't heard because they were kids, they were stupid, da 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 da. And it was like, man, like I was so grateful that she said that, because I was like, yeah, I want children to understand, like they should be seen, they should be, their input matters, their feelings matter. Like, I think when you can have that, yeah, respect that you had mentioned, Cassie, I think that really does stand out. And the voices that, the kids will remember, like you said, Genevieve. One of the things that, kind of stood out to me was very stereotypical, like, yeah, let's do good with finances from dad, and then also one of the things that I really do love about my mom, I remember I had asked a question, and my younger brother was like, that, I can't believe you don't know that. That's such a stupid question. And my mom like shot him down right away. And she was like, the only stupid question is the one not asked. So good job, Sarah. And I was like, oh, thanks. Like, so I really felt like seen in that. And it kind of gave me permission to be vulnerable, to ask questions, to kind of admit, I don't know how to do this. So help me. Like, I didn't have an ego, or had pride in knowing I had it all figured out. So I was glad to have that permission to, fail, permission to kind of figure things out on my own, and permission to ask questions. So yeah, that's what I would want for everybody and children going forward. Even though I don't have
Love,
children, but I do love and respect them and think they're here for a reason, right? We all are.
I,
Like,
I, I love that. Well, and I like, I think that what's really neat is that you're so right that the way that you show up for kids really, really establishes their worth and their sense of belonging and inclusion. And so the reason that you um were so much more engaged with those nieces, even though you
mhm,
saw them less frequently, is because that's how you show up.
mhm,
And that is a really important way to show up for kids,
mhm.
to feel like
And
Yeah.
they
that,
belong and are a part of and matter. So I love
yeah.
that, Sarah.
Oh
And
no,
I
thank
think
you.
it's
Well, you
something
guys
that,
too.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think it's something for you to impress upon, like that, the fact that your impact on their lives is probably bigger than you even realize. Like there's probably, and especially because you're on social media, Sarah, like I think it's really cool that they do get to see you And I don't know that they're old enough to watch or listen to Eddie's podcast, but I think
Mhm.
that's something to be said when there's that mutual respect. I think that respect earns respect, right? Like, so when you respect someone, that's when you receive it, is
Mhm.
when you're giving that same respect. So, when you have a child who's defiant, I think it's good to look at the defiancy really comes from not being heard, not being seen, not feeling like they're valued. And so really looking at that. And as I'm saying that, I'm like, as I'm thinking about my own kids, I'm like, listen to your own self.
Heed your words. Heed your own
Yeah.
Yeah.
words.
Yeah.
Don't
I think
preach to
that's
the
why it's good to
choir.
talk it. Yeah, I think that's why it's so good to talk about it too, because I feel like that self-awareness to, okay, I could have done a better job, or I need to come back and say, you know what, sorry I said that. Like, I'm not saying
Yeah.
I don't make mistakes. I definitely do, and have had to kind of confront, like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that to you, or,
Yeah.
let's talk about that because it's, there's a boundary here, or a barrier that, or a wall that we're putting up, and I
Yeah.
think, aunts, or siblings, or parents, like we can all have those, or spouses, like we all have those times in our life where it's like, yeah, it's just a lack of communication and understanding.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important to be vulnerable and allow a safe space for
Yes.
things to be shared, and also be able to start over. I think, I don't know if it was a TV show or it was in real life. Sometimes I get it confused. But there was like, I saw this one thing where it was like restart, like they wanted to, like, almost like the taboo button, like they pretended to
Yeah.
like hit a taboo button. Was that
Mhm.
off a show? I can't remember, but it was all about like, I need to redo this day, or I need to
Yes.
redo this conversation. And it was like, okay, I'll give you one chance. And like, it was like everything was forgiven, like that day. And then starting over, this is what I really meant to say.
Yeah.
And it was like, if you allow yourself that redo and
Yes.
restart, like
Yeah.
in relationships, I think that can be really, like, okay,
Yeah.
let's start fresh, like, and
Yeah.
move forward rather than
Yeah.
hanging on grudgingly. So,
I think that's a great
Yeah.
segue into addiction. Like, because
Totally.
addiction, just because you have an addiction or have experienced some sort of obsessive behavior, doesn't mean
Yeah.
that's the end for you. Actually, there is a reset button. Like, you can, and even when you slip up and you make a choice to maybe you have the drink or you eat the sugar or whatever it is that you're trying to abstain from, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. But when it ends is when you stop becoming aware of what's happening. Like, for an example, I decided, okay, I'm going to just try sugar. I haven't had sugar since September. And I thought I'm just going to try it here and there. So this week I've dabbled. I had like almond chocolate milk. The doctor said, oh, it's a great after like chocolate milk. I was trying almond milk because I can't do dairy. So I thought, it'd be great to have like an occasional treat. So I tried it. And I fully was aware that not alcohol, sugar, like it does the same thing alcohol did for me. Alcohol made me an angry person. Like I was always short tempered. I was quick to like respond or react. And sugar does the same thing. So I was like, I noticed this week I was short tempered and I was like, oh, it's got to be the sugar. So it's not that I can't
Mhm.
have it. I just have to be aware that, like, oh, this is something it causes. And it is
Yeah.
actually like scientifically proven that sugar is basically causing the same reaction as cocaine in the mind.
Yeah.
Um, I heard actually that gluten and dairy, that it behaves the same in the mind as morphine, which is
Yeah.
crazy. I didn't know those things. I was like, what? That's insane. So yeah, think about that.
wow. Yeah, that is good
Well,
to know.
and alcohol actually, like they've done studies, and alcohol is actually just as damaging to the body as heroin use.
Really? Wow.
Or more so sometimes. It's just really fascinating the way that these
Yes.
substances function in our bodies, um and just being aware of the impact that it has, and you know uh understanding it, I think, is really critical. And then I think if you're in an ongoing dialogue with yourself about how is this serving me,
Yeah.
then you can continue to be in a contemplative place about a behavior, and it doesn't have to become compulsive, like you said,
Right.
because addiction is really a compulsive engagement in a behavior,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and I love that. Have
Yeah.
we ever shared the definition of addiction? I think we probably should have like started with that, but now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think we did share it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious.
I don't
Let's.
think so.
I'm just gonna pull it up, and then I know that you want to be off by 7:15 or 6:15 today, Genevieve. So I think we probably want to dive into the conversation about SAMHSA and
Yes.
maybe.
So I think that while you're looking up like the definition of addiction, I think addiction is any sort of compulsive behavior. And this isn't the medical definition, any sort of compulsive behavior that um is maladaptive and doesn't serve you. I mean, and compulsive behaviors generally don't serve us. Like
Yeah,
when we're engaged in a compulsion,
even healthy
um,
stuff.
even, yeah, exactly. So even healthy behaviors can, if they are compulsive, they can become dangerous, just like compulsive exercising or compulsive eating or whatever. Um, but like in thinking about that and just understanding that there's a lot of different layers to addiction. Um, I think it's important to know what resources are out there and to know that addiction treatment is very like the different modalities for addiction treatment are very vast. There's a lot of different modalities. You will find that typically, I think that the direction that people go is behavioral therapies, because one of the things that you are trying to do is change a behavior. And like you were saying earlier, not on this conversation, but before we were starting, is without the support of an individual to help you explore explore the absence of that behavior. Like when a person gives up a compulsive behavior, the absence of it leaves a void that often we try to fill with other behaviors, substances, different things. And it's really important to have a behavioral therapist helping you look at the function of the behavior and what can you replace or what can you do differently so that you don't engage in another behavior compulsively and just substitute one addiction for another, because that
Yeah.
happens a lot for people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
um
Accountability is so needed in order
yeah,
to
yeah,
like
it
understand
is.
you're not alone.
So
Hmm.
that I think that's behavior therapy, but there's they're using ketamine treatments and microdosing to treat addiction now, and they are they if part of your numbing behavior is as a result of early childhood trauma, engaging in trauma treatment is really important. If you have a dual diagnosis, if you have both a substance abuse disorder and a mental health disorder, there's dual diagnosis treatment. So treatment that looks at both the mental health and the substance abuse. And so it is really, really important to know that there are lots of different treatment modalities, and no one treatment modality is right for everybody. And it's really important to explore. And it's really important to do that in consultation with, a mental health provider or a medical provider. And, SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, basically is the national resource for addiction. And they are incredible. And their website has a ton of resources available. And they also have a national helpline. So if you're struggling with something, their helpline is available, and it's there on the website. But I'm going to just give it to you guys. I wrote it down in my notes. It's 1-800-662 4357, which spells help. So 1-800-662-HELP. And I'm glad you threw that up there. This is an incredible resource, and just a way to get you started and give you information.
Thanks for sharing that,
so
Genevieve.
yeah. So
Sorry if I talked too much.
I did put in the chat on YouTube. So again, I think it's really important to also note that when you're going through your treatment or through recovery or just quitting, like it's good to have support. but make sure if you don't feel connected to your support team, you've got to find the right team. And any good physician, any good mental health team will get you they'll want to encourage you to find someone you connect
Yeah.
with. Now, they will call you out if you're just trying to like bounce
Yeah.
from provider to provider.
Yes.
Like there is such a thing as avoidance, right? I
Yes.
know that I've played the avoidance game, not necessarily with addiction, but I've avoided like certain things, and it's another numbing technique to avoid and to
Mhm.
dissociate. So I
Mhm.
think that's really important to communicate with your doctor. Like, I don't know that this therapy is right for me, or I don't know that this is helping me. The only way that they'll
Mhm.
know is if you're telling them. Like, I tell my doctor everything. I will tell her if I feel like a drug made me feel weird, if or I'll like, hey, I quit this thing here and it made me feel this way. Like, is there something going on with my brain? Like, I'm
Mhm.
the oversharer, so like I think they slot me in for like this extra long appointment because they're like, oh, she's gonna tell us every single thing that's wrong with her. Like, I saw this mole on my back and it's itchy, and like, you know, like I've
Yeah.
always got to have them check everything.
Hey,
But
that's okay. Better safe than sorry.
right.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to feel comfortable with your team, and
Yes.
like, I've been getting my son his own recovery team, and the first team didn't feel right. It didn't feel like they really were
Right.
giving him what he needed. Not that they were not doing what they were, like, they knew what they were doing. They're fully capable. It just didn't feel like the right connection. And that's okay, because when you go through something like addiction and quitting, like we've all been through it. We've all quit something that was really hard.
Mhm.
It's hard when you don't feel connected to your team. So
Well,
let's,
it's an isolating experience. And so
yeah.
if you don't have a team that you feel connection with and supported by, you just feel further isolated. And
Yeah.
so that's
Mhm.
why it is really important to make sure you surround yourself with the right supports that really make you feel scaffolded in your recovery journey. Um, and
Mhm.
the other one that we didn't mention, Cassie, is 12 steps. And 12 steps
Yeah.
works really, really well. And it's a tested model. And it is very effective for a lot of people, but not for everybody. And it's okay to go, the route that most people, have found is effective. And if that works for you, that's awesome. Like more power to you. But we just want to empower you to find the right thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's
and not
multiple
give up.
platforms. Yeah, there's multiple platforms for, alcohol addiction. You've got
Mhm.
Alcoholics Anonymous, you've got codependency. I mean, there's so many, and actually that kind of leads us to our next month. February is
Yes.
going to be all about love. Love. We're
Yay.
going
Yay.
to talk relationships and just share some really cool information. I think we're probably all going to get really uncomfortable. I mean, it's just, I know I'm going to be uncomfortable. I love talking
Yeah.
about relationships, but I know that there are things where I'm like, oh man, I feel like this is so uncomfortable and I'm not sure I want to talk about it. So,
Yeah.
but it's been really cool to have this conversation because we are able to talk about things. And then I'm like, oh, it wasn't so scary. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
we talked about
Hmm.
it and it wasn't scary. I didn't freak out. Like,
Hmm.
and I'm pretty open to most conversations. So,
Hmm.
Yeah.
um, Sarah, was there anything else that you wanted to share? I guess I want to come back around to the healthy side of it, because like you had
Yes.
mentioned in previous episodes about being
Hmm.
an over exerciser, even the
Hmm.
healthy aspect. Like, did you have to
Yeah.
find, I don't remember if you had said if you had to find help to kind of break that
Hmm.
habit, or how did you
Yeah.
go about that?
Yeah, I think it's, how we had kind of mentioned like certain addictions can also turn into other addictions. And I
Mhm.
Yes.
think for a long time it was sugar addiction,
Yes.
and then that also kind of, morphed into over exercising because of the sugar addiction was there with like binge and emotional eating. So it kind of all like encompassed it. So yeah, I think for me it was basically yes, reaching out, asking for help. I talked to Eddie and I told him I was like, I need to not use this scale. And that was like my first big step was like, can we throw away this scale? And he's like, sure. Is everything okay? I was like, no. Like, but it felt
Oh,
like very raw and
love it.
emotional. And,
Yes. Yeah.
but it was like a full decade of not having the scale. And it was like, what, 2 years ago, I want to say, he got a new scale. And I was like, I think I'm okay. And I totally am. And I just feel like it's something that I'm definitely grateful that I haven't had that like temptation, and even just
Mhm.
like putting up boundaries of like not putting myself in the situations where it can lead to that,
Yes,
like setting up, and I know I mentioned it before, but having my home be a health haven rather than like,
yes,
certain,
yes,
treats and sweets that I just feel like, I just can't have Doritos in my house, and it is what it is. Like, because there's just certain things that I will, self-sabotage on. But
yes.
yeah, as far as exercising, teaching at a gym, they've asked me to teach more classes, and I'm like, nope. So
Healthy
I'm
boundary.
getting closer
Yeah.
to five hours a week of working out, and that's where I'm at, and that's where my body feels good. And I'm like, you know what? I'm really happy that it, went from 20 hours a week down to 5, and and it
Yes,
wasn't necessarily working out on my own. It was just saying yes to, like teaching
Yes.
more classes, and
Yeah.
that had to do with like needing money and a job, and that's
yes,
all that I felt trained and professional for. Well, not that professional, but good enough to like, get
yeah,
more work as a fitness instructor. So I think, yeah, just kind of understanding yourself and being honest and reaching out like you had
yes,
said, and then having like a step by step, kind of fumbled into figuring that out on my own, but at the same time, not alone, because I was able to kind of talk about it to people, and it
yes,
gave it less power too when you do share, kind
Yeah.
of like Cassie had
yes,
mentioned, like, oh, I'm scared to share, and then after we're done sharing, it's like, oh, that wasn't that bad. That actually felt really good. It was very
Yeah.
therapeutic when we talk about these struggles that
yes.
we have, because we're not alone in it. Like Genevieve said, it can be very isolating, but it doesn't have to be. And
No.
as soon as you don't give that isolation power, like you take some of it back, and you realize like, oh, I can do this. And
Yes,
I'm not alone in this. And other people have had these same struggles. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, this is the human experience. And I think,
it is.
just understanding that it's all about struggles, challenges,
Yeah.
triumphs, struggles, challenges, triumphs, like
Yeah.
highs
It's
and
a
lows of
ebb and
life.
flow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a roller coaster, but
Mhm.
roller coasters can be a lot of fun, but they can also be
Yeah.
really scary. So it's
Oh
okay
yeah.
to get scared. Some people don't like roller
Mhm.
coasters at all, and they just want to get
Yeah.
on the train and just ride straight ahead. And that's
Yes.
okay too. Like, you got to find
Mhm.
out what works for you. I
Yeah.
do want to drop, actually, once we get off, I'll find it, but there was this really good, it was actually our school counselors. They teach once a week for our kids, and they were home because it was an ice day, and they sent us this link, and it had like this PowerPoint presentation. And while I can't share the PowerPoint presentation, I could share the book. Um,
Yeah.
the like
Mm.
little book, it was like worry. It talked about worry, and it was like
Oh
this
yeah.
worry monster. I don't know if you've heard of this
Mm.
book, Genevieve, but I was like, I love this book. I was like getting
Oh.
tearful because I was like,
Oh.
it's teaching me that I shouldn't worry about my worry. Like, it was the
Oh.
sweetest, cutest book, and I
Totally.
just loved it. So I want to share this book
Mhm.
with you guys because it's on YouTube for free.
Yeah.
You can, it was like a read along, and they had pictures, and I think it would
Oh.
be really great. So it
Neat.
was
Yeah.
interesting because the day that we watched it, he was home. My son, who's 6, was home, and he was like freaking out about something that wasn't working. He's very like particular, and has some tendencies for autism. Like, he's probably on the spectrum, as I think many of us are. But we really focus on like the person. Like, in that
Mhm.
moment, he needed someone to like understand his worry. And while the worry to me seems so silly, to him it wasn't. And I wanted to
Oh.
validate that it's okay for him to have that worry, but he wasn't open to listening. So I was like, okay, we're going to bring out Mrs. Milky's program because it was about worry. I had saw the title. I was like, all right, I'm going to play it. And he was
Oh.
crying. Like, he was like, I'm not watching it. And I just put it on in the background, and I was like, because we were on the couch, and I throw it up there, and I'm like watching it. And as I'm watching it, I'm softening. I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, he's just worried. And I'm like,
Oh.
and he's curled up in the corner, like trying to force fake cry now because he has stopped crying because he's watching the book out of the corner of his eye, and he's like, and I'm like,
Oh.
hey, it's working. So then by the time we got done with the book, even though he didn't want to listen in the beginning, I just had it on in the background. He eventually was like, I was just worried that my toy would never go back together. And I was like,
Oh.
honey, it's okay to be
Oh.
worried about that, because he loved the toy. So it was very
Oh.
sweet. And the book was really helpful to like bring us to a place where
Oh.
we could talk about his worry.
Mhm. Mhm.
And because it shared like two kids sharing their worries. And then they both
Yeah.
were able
Oh.
to shrink their worry down to this little fluffy thing. And I was like, I love this. So I'm
Oh.
going to share it. That was the whole point of
Yeah.
that.
Oh, I love that.
Uh,
I'm a
and
visual
Yeah,
learner as well, so I
it's
feel like that can be
yeah.
definitely helpful. So yeah, thank you.
Bibliotherapy is so good. Like reading books with kids and talking about it and using it as a therapeutic tool is so effective, because what it does is it gives it removes the situation from us just enough that we can look at it more objectively. And that
yeah.
is really, really neat because it's like it's third person, right? Like this is a third party that it can be really powerful. And
Yeah.
actually, I mean, adults engage in bibliotherapy all the time, right? We're reading books
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about and we're engaging. Like this is like,
Mm-hmm.
our book study is actually
Yes.
a therapeutic process. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's therapeutic. I think the
Hearing
other thing,
greatly.
yeah,
Anyway.
hearing greatly. And I think
Sorry
the
for
other thing to
whiplash.
recognize is, you know, um, therapy is one aspect of treatment, and like treatment involve like going and seeing a therapist. They're like a lot of times they give you a roadmap, and there's so many other aspects to recovery. And one of the things that I think is really, I want to like just kind of to say to end on is actually honestly one of the best things you can do for yourself is to move your body 20 to 30 minutes a day. One of the best things you can do for yourself is
Mm-hmm.
to move your body 20 to 30 minutes a day. Um, get direct sunlight for at least 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
That is one of the best things you can do for yourself in recovery, in recovery from anything, and working on mental health. Um, exposure to cold actually naturally boosts all of those chemicals and neurotransmitters and things like that in our brain that feel so good.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not like not you're not going to compulsively engage in a cold plunge. I don't think, maybe you are, that's a really like 1 to 5 minutes of cold exposure is super, super good. And these are all things like just that you need to build it. It's, build into your lifestyle. So just remembering that a lot of times when you're addressing an addiction, there are also some really simple, not easy adjustments you can make to bolstering and to generating some of those chemicals that the substance was generating falsely for you,
Yeah.
you know.
I
Yeah.
saw
So
this woman on TikTok, or not TikTok, it was on Instagram. I wish I would have saved it. I think I sent it to my husband. She was like she showed like 10 different ways that you could avoid overeating. Like it was
uh-huh.
food, I think she was food addiction or something. But one of them was like take a bowl of ice and just stick your face in it. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's brilliant. Like, I don't want to get in the shower in the cold shower. I've tried it, cold
Mm-hmm.
plunges. I just can't. But I was like, okay, I
Yeah.
can get on board with like a face plunge, like just a simple wake
I
up,
Mm-hmm.
love that.
avoid,
Yeah.
getting the whole body. But she had really great tips. So I'll try to find that Instagram page. I'm all for sharing people's pages,
Yes.
and anybody
Yeah.
that is helping with mental health.
Anyway.
Um, Jimmy Relationships, I think is what Jimmy does, relationships or something. He's on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
He's phenomenal. I'll
Mm-hmm.
drop his page in here too.
Yeah.
But he talks about like narcissism and relationship help. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what's really beautiful about having so many people be able to share on social media is this gives us more opportunity to
Yes.
know different ways that work. So there's
Yeah.
Yeah.
tons of information out
Mm-hmm.
there, but don't overwhelm yourself.
Yeah.
Try things and see what
Mm-hmm.
works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 I like how
Yeah.
you said that because
Um,
it can be overwhelming unless you decide that it's not. And
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like,
exactly.
I'm going to do this one thing that, you know, Genevieve had mentioned, and I think that can
Just
just
pick
start,
one thing.
but yeah,
Yeah.
just pick one thing. And sometimes it can be a domino effect, but that domino effect might not happen over the course of 60 days, it might happen
Right.
at
Yeah.
90 days. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, and now I moved
Yeah.
on. It's funny you mentioned the cold because I take an ice cube and just like depuff, like,
Well,
so while I
like
was making coffee this morning, I just had an ice cube that I put in a towel and I got it wet. And so it was kind of like melting and I'm just like, oh, it feels so
now we're learning all
good.
Sarah's skin secrets.
I
Now
know.
we're
That's one of
beautiful.
my tips. Oh, stop. You're so sweet.
That's why
Good
she looked
lighting.
like an angel. That's why
I
she
know.
looked like an angel when she popped on. I'm like, oh my God,
She
she's an
does.
angel.
It's the ring lights.
I know we were talking about the
That
ring light
helps.
this morning.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Genevieve's was acting
definitely.
up, so we were talking about it.
Oh yeah. You're like, we
The
need a
little
good
ring
ring
thing.
light.
I was like, nah. There was something
No.
else I wanted to talk to you guys about, and now I can't remember. Maybe it'll be next time. But
Yeah.
next week we're gonna move to Friday, right?
Yes.
Friday
Yeah,
live.
that works. Hmm.
Oh,
Works
we
for me.
didn't read the term of addiction. We never came
Oh
back to
yeah, let's do that. Let's
that.
end
So
on that.
yeah, I think that's a good way to end. So
Yeah.
next Friday, I think is the 9th. Is that right? Because we're skipping this
Yes.
Friday, right? So the 9th
Yes.
will be our
It'll be the
next
name. Yes.
unlikely
Okay. Hmm.
conversations. And we'll be
Hmm.
starting in on relationships and
Yes.
talking intimacy and things like that. So addiction, there's two that I'm going to share. One is the actual definition in the dictionary. It says the fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. Now, addiction, like the actual substance abuse addiction, it says addiction is defined as a chronic relapsing disorder characterized by compulsive drug seeking and use despite adverse consequences. It is considered a brain disorder because it involves functional changes to the brain circuits involved in reward, stress, and self control. So I think it's
Yep.
really very important that you have to acknowledge what kind of addiction you have because there are
Yes.
different types. And I'm not
Yes.
talking like what you're addicted to, but there are ones that do need
Hmm.
assistance. Like if you come off of it, there could be things that happen that could be very detrimental.
Yes.
So
Yes.
always make sure you just talk to your doctor and they're not gonna like put you away. They're not gonna
No.
put you in a loony
Hmm.
bin. Like they're not gonna be like, oh my gosh, you have a problem. I was always afraid, like if I told my doctor that I drank every day, that she was gonna look at me different and I was gonna lose respect or something.
I agree.
Even though I
I felt
wasn't,
the same way, Cassie.
yeah.
I felt the
Hmm.
same way, just so you know.
Okay, well, that makes me feel better because I was thinking, man,
Hmm.
I could never, and I love my doctor. She's so great. But I want you to know you're not alone. It doesn't mean
No.
you're a
Hmm.
bad person. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. And if someone respects you less because of what your choices are that are probably not in your control anyways, you're just trying to cope, this is probably not the
Hmm.
right relationship. Shameless
Totally.
plug for
Right.
next month.
That's true. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Good point.
thank you guys so
Hmm.
much for this. This
Yeah.
is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you
love
for,
this.
Yeah.
yeah, me too.
Fun.
Thanks for providing the space for it. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'll put the link in. We'll drop it in Facebook for other people. I've got all
Mm.
of these other links. We've got Brené's manifesto out there. We've got
Mm.
SAMHSA. So please reach out if you need help. And if you're not sure where to go, drop in the comments.
Mm.
You know we are trying to give you guys as many tools as we can because we don't want you to feel
Mm.
alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So,
Exactly.
all right,
Awesome.
guys,
Love that.
love
Thank
you.
you.